And welcome back to Sandton Convention Centre. And this, of course, the inaugural Public Works and Infrastructure Summit. And this is a very important one, given how government has established that this will be the vehicle to get us towards growing our economy and, of course, thereby creating jobs. So the theme of this particular inaugural summit speaks to that, turning South Africa into a construction site and thereby growing the economy and creating the necessary jobs. But of course, South Africans have been hearing this refrain for a long, long time. I'm joined now by the CEO of the Council for the Built Environment, Dr. Msizi Mnyeza. Thanks so much, Dr. Mnyeza. You are the hosts for the summit. So let's just locate the Council for the Built Environment in this entire conversation in terms of what you're responsible for.
Good morning, Sakina. Good morning to your viewers at home. The Council for the Built Environment is a public entity that falls under Public Works. In the main, our responsibility, we derive it from the CBE Act of 2000. What we do, we regulate the professionals in the built environment, be it engineers, architects, construction managers, quantity surveyors, and the rest. And also we deal with their code of conduct, and also understanding that the built environment is broader than just professionals. Also deal with the professionals in terms of what they do, because the work that we do really impacts communities and society and shapes the cities and towns that we live in. So that's really what the CBE does. Obviously, as a thought leadership in the sector, we engage on different platforms such as this one, where we solicit input from the profession on how best we can contribute in the agenda of government of basically developing this country.
So in terms of compliance, working with the professionals, most South Africans will say we talk about turning South Africa into a construction site. At the moment, South Africa is a site of incomplete projects.
Look, that's a challenge that professionally we are grappling with. And I think one of the key issues that we have to accept, without committing my colleagues in the industry, is that we could have done better. And I think South Africans deserve better from us. However, it's not lost, and I'm sure such platforms provide us with an opportunity to re-platform, rebase, and try and go back to the roots on what we actually envisioned when we took up a profession. Because our view is that being a built environment professional in this country, it's not just a career, it is a profession, but it is a calling because of the nature of the challenge that we as a country faces. Therefore, we can't just operate as if we're not aware of the challenges that are confronting our communities that we serve. So I think the issues of ethics, it's something that we are driving strongly from ourselves together with the regulatory bodies that we work with. And I think it's anchored around the strategy that was approved by MINMEC last year, just to say, let's go back to the basics, do what we expected of us in terms of delivering on the mandate professionally.
So staying with compliance, the minister mentioned a rather staggering statistic in my interview with him earlier on. He says since 2002, only one company has been blacklisted, and yet we know of the transgressions. We see them daily. They are littered all across the country. Communities can call in right now and tell you about them. So how do you regulate compliance of these entities? Because one would imagine there would be so many more that should be on that list.
Without digressing from the issue, I think there is something that as a country must discuss in terms of who becomes a contractor. What competencies do they possess? What skills do they possess? Can they actually do the work that they tender for? Secondly, I think we might have to consider professionalizing the construction sector. Because if we don't do that, you're running a risk of muddying the profession. Because in the profession, anybody can come in and claim to be a contractor and get tenders from the state. But when you start inquiring who is this person, you discover that actually this person has never been to any of the built environment school, at least to understand the basics around the work that they're undertaking. So for me, it's a conversation that is uncomfortable, but we need to have it.
It is a necessary conversation because it speaks to the problems that we have. These cost overruns don't happen by accident. We all know how the story goes. Someone gets a tender, they should not, as you say, this is a contractor who's never been to any of our trade or built environment profession schools, and yet they receive a tender, they skim off the top what they need to take, and then they subcontract to people who would have been to these entities, to these schools. So where's their ethics in this?
Look, I think for me, one of the issues that we have to put forward when we're engaging on the public procurement bill at the time was the issue of subcontracting. That obviously we must accept that there will be small emerging contractors and consulting firms that will want to do work with the state. We accept that. But secondly, there must be a process of ensuring that the people that we subcon to, they have the capacity required to execute the project. The second issue, I think, is the issue of professional ethics. And I'm driving on this point, Sakina, because I think it's important. If you take on any professional work, you are expected to execute that work professionally within your code of conduct. And at times, colleagues tend to digress from that. And I think that's one of the areas that, from a regulatory point of view, must start zooming into and start punishing colleagues who are transgressing. And really demonstrate that we mean business. And it can't be correct that our industry and the profession is being dented by few individuals who are actually masquerading as built environment professionals when they're not.
Where and how, Dr. Mieza? I said this to the minister as well. We're quite good at sloganeering. You know, we are good at putting out all the platitudes, but how are we going to turn South Africa into a construction site that is different from the construction site with incomplete projects that we are seeing now? What are we going to do differently?
Look, I think I'm going to actually share with you some of the stats that is actually mind-boggling. I mean, if you look at our profession, it's very aging. It's made up of male, predominantly white. That's one issue. Secondly, women are excluded in this profession. 30 years later into democracy, only 14% of women are part of the profession. And thirdly, we've got about 30,000 young graduates in our database who have been there as candidates. And I think if we can unlock that potential, that capacity of kids who went to school to study the built environment careers, be it civil, quantity surveying, who cannot be converted into becoming professionally registered person. I think for me, if we can systematically, intentionally make efforts to ensure that we create opportunities for these young kids who might have a different perspective of what we've been doing, and also who've chosen this career because they want to. So I think for me, focusing on skills development, supporting these young professionals. Today we'll be launching a program, I think the minister will speak to it. It's about young professionals that we are training to do the work for the state of becoming infrastructure auditors. Because I think we realize that if we don't even know what capacity infrastructure we have in this country. And I think these kids will assist us with that kind of work. But I think it's a huge task, but we are up to the challenge.
Dr. Msiza will be here as SABC News to follow up and listen to all that is going to be tackled here this morning and this afternoon. So this is the inaugural summit, and of course focusing on the built environment, as Dr. Msiza was saying. So infrastructure development, looking at turning South Africa into a construction site. Let's hear how we are going to envision those particular developments. Also, how is it meant to grow the economy and the jobs that go with that? From the Sandton Convention Centre, we'll hand it back to studio for now.